Hey, it's Marco from Craft Coffee Spot, and today we're going to be talking about the Breville Bambino versus the Breville Bambino Plus. These are Breville's two entry-level machines, and I've been using them for over a year, and they are two of my favorite machines for beginners. But they have a couple key differences that we'll just talk through today. So to start, when you look at the design of both machines, it is Breville's classic kind of stainless steel build, good metal casing on the exterior, durable components all around. Like I said, I've been using them for over a year without any issue on either one. The Bambino Plus is a little larger, about a 1.9 liter water tank versus 1.4 on the Bambino, but both are actually a little bit smaller than your typical coffee machine. One small difference, the Bambino Plus does have a low water sensor. That's actually a nice little addition. Both two have the same interface. You can see a 1 cup and a 2 cup button, and you could actually reprogram both of those to get a preset volume. And I like their volume based, which is easy. When you get into the internals, that's really what makes both of them stand out. They both have Breville's latest Thermojet heating system. The Thermojet is essentially an upgraded thermocoil, and that means that it's a thin layer of metal with piping that runs through it, where cold water comes in one side and hot water comes in the out. The difference, though, is that it's such a thin system that the heat transfer is very efficient, and both these machines actually start up in 3 seconds. You get to 200-degree water, which is really impressive. On top of that, there's another sensor known as a PID that helps regulate the temperature for both machines. And the third thing is there's actually a low pressure pre-infusion. The machines start at a low pressure and soak the grounds before going to the full 9 bars. And when you combine the Thermojet, the PID sensor, and the pre-infusion, you get a really good espresso from both of them, especially for, like I said, these kind of starter, more entry-level machines. Now, one downside of the Thermojet is, while that heats up very quickly, the internal piping in the brew head does not. And so when you turn on these machines, make sure you run just a blank shot. Just run some water through the machine into your milk jug and toss that out before starting. Now, one small difference in the two is the Bambino Plus does have a solenoid valve. And what that is essentially a pressure release, where it releases the water within the shot into the drip tray. And it helps just go from high pressure to zero and make a little more consistent pressure. Now, in reality, I don't think it really matters that much. I mean, these are preset by volume, so you're really going to get the same amount of espresso out of each one. You'll notice that the Bambino Plus makes a little bit of a sneeze when you have that solenoid valve release. And one downside is the drip tray is a little bit more flimsy on the Bambino Plus. So overall, I think these are both great internals. They make great espresso. They'll be happy with each one. The big difference is on the milk frothing side, as the Bambino Plus has an automatic steam wand. So notice there's a temperature sensor in the base, and there's different settings for both texture and temperature. And all you have to do is fill up your milk jug, put it underneath the steam wand on the sensor, and let it go. And I have several thoughts on this system. So on the one hand, it works. You can get a nice froth. It is very easy to use. It's really intuitive on the settings. On the other hand, it doesn't work that well for non-dairy milks because the steam wand is just submerged the entire time. And when you have a non-dairy milk, like I personally drink oat milk, that has a lower fat and lower protein content. And so you do need to spend more time kind of aerating and stretching the milk. It requires a little more finesse to get right. Also, the Bambino Plus, the steam one has a self-cleaning, which is really nice. But I find this one to be a little, let's say, aggressive on this cleaning. It purges about 4 separate times, and it can make a bit of a mess. And so just make sure you have your towel over it the entire time to keep it clean. On the other hand, the Bambino has your traditional manual steam wand. The tip has just one hole, and what that means, it takes a little longer. It takes about a full minute to steam. But it still generates a really high pressure, and you can get a really nice texture on your milk. And actually, I kind of like that as a one hole because it's very forgiving. It's good for beginners. When you have that full minute, it gives you the time to angle your milk jug right, make sure you're getting the air in there, getting that nice hissing noise before you put it underneath and stretch it. Versus, some high-end machines, you get really 10 seconds to stretch, 10 seconds to aerate, and then it can get burnt. So I think it's a great option for beginners. It works better for me with oat milk, but the Bambino Plus is still really easy to use. And now if we talk about some other kind of more tertiary features of the machines, you'll notice the Bambino does have a dedicated hot water button for it. Now, on the Bambino Plus, you can do dedicated hot water out of the wand. Just make sure you lift up the wand and hold the 1 cup and the texture bun at the same time. The other difference is the Bambino Plus does come in more colors, and personally, I really like the Damson Blue. Meanwhile, the Bambino just comes in a traditional stainless steel. They both come with the same portafilter, which is a little bit of plastic on the exterior, plastic on the interior, but honestly, it's still quite fine. Let's put it that way. Short spouts work. Personally, I use a bottomless portafilter. I actually use this 54 millimeter portafilter, and I actually like the basket more than Breville's default baskets, and so I'll put a link to this in the description below. Speaking of baskets, they all come with a 1 cup and 2 cup single wall and dual wall filters, and they both come with a tamper. Personally, I think you want to get an upgrade on the Bambino, but both are good. So overall, where do I stand? Well, I think if you ask most people, they would tell you get the Bambino Plus because it's a better machine. And that is true. It does have the automatic steam wand. It's a little larger. It does have a solenoid valve. But my recommendation goes towards the Bambino. And why is that? Well, it just comes at a much more affordable price. And it's important for these models because neither comes with a grinder. And when you're making espresso, the grinder is as important or even more important than the machine itself. So when I was testing this, we were using a DF64 flat roll grinder, which is excellent and I recommend it. But it's about as expensive as these machines. So if you are buying one of these, you're going to also need to invest in a grinder. And so when you think about it, you could get the Bambino Plus, or you can get a Bambino plus a grinder. And for example, you can get the 1Z Espresso kind of manual hand grinder, which, like I said, the combination of this is about the same cost as the Bambino Plus. When you think about it that way, I recommend getting the Bambino and investing more in a grinder. Now, that said, both are excellent machines. I said both are relatively comparable because they have excellent internals. Both are good options, and I think great for beginners. And if you want to find these, I'll put links in the description below. You can also see a link to our article on their blog, which is a lot more detailed than I covered here. And if you enjoyed this video, hit like, and if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe to get notifications for those.